like an aging athlete who is desperately trying to hold on. Think Johnny Unitas playing for the San Diego Chargers, or Aaron Rodgers with the New York Jets. At some point, reality hits, and it's time to admit that the former All-Star just doesn't have it anymore. Well, the Montgomery County Public School system is like that aging athlete. It rose to prominence in the 1960s, and now 60 years later, its reputation for excellence, it may be running on fumes. The headline highlights that MCPS performs better than the state average, but the actual statistics, when you look at them, show that MCPS is failing our children. Think about this. Overall, only 57% of elementary schools are proficient in literacy, and 45% are competent in math. And for Hispanic and African American kids, the results are abysmal. Mike, I know this is something you're familiar with. You had to deal with this when you were on the county council. You have to deal with it in your involvement with Montgomery College. You know, where's the outrage? And kudos to Adam Pagnucco for analyzing the data, reporting it, and exposing it.
Sure. No, I mean, I think you've seen the outrage, right? We have a new superintendent that's been here for just under 6 months. We have, you have all of the incumbents were voted out in the last election for the Board of Education. And so I think you're seeing people have engaged and are taking an active role in trying to change the direction from a leadership perspective. The challenge we have now is looking at these test scores. They're a lagging indicator, which shows that, yes, the outrage was there, the change needs to be made. And now the question is, how is new leadership making those changes and moving us forward? The reality is that, and you're right, we actually were doing much better 15 to 20 years ago as it related across all demographic characteristics. And I think there was a resting of our laurels. And candidly, I think there was changes in leadership that they wanted to move away from a more stringent approach to how we're managing things within the school system. And as a result, we've been very lax. And I think what you're seeing now is a result of this inattentiveness and a significant change in our demographics, which in and of itself is, I think, is very exciting. But you have to recognize that we have different populations that learn differently with different needs, and I don't believe that we've kept up with that. And I think the new leadership can move us in that direction. And the time is now, and we're going to see in the coming months.
You know, the statistics shows for what's happening at all grade levels, middle, elementary, middle, and high school levels. But what I found troubling is, you know, the elementary school has not been affected by COVID. These are kids that have gone to school after COVID, and they're still not learning. So I want to turn to you, Laurie. You served on the State Board of Education. How can we have a productive society if the majority of our kids can't read, write, and do arithmetic? You know, for goodness gracious, you can't even be a carpenter if you don't understand basic math.
Well, I think one thing Adam is not really honing in on is the demographics, which I know we've mentioned and touched on here, but there's been a massive cultural shift in our county that we're not acknowledging enough. Yes, it's wonderful that we have diversity, but look what's happened. We have now, when you look at the test takers in elementary school, there's over 12,000 Hispanic test takers in elementary and only around 8,000 white students. That's a huge change in demographics. And, you know, I think because of the policies of the Democrats that have been in control for so long in our county, we now have, students that really need to just learn how, right now they're learning how to speak English. So our teachers are focusing more on teaching the English language versus teaching the students who speak English. They're not learning other things. They're learning with all the other students about.
That's not a new problem. I mean,
it's more of a problem because there's a lot more people that are Hispanic and other ethnicities, and diversity is great, but we're not ready. We're not managing that the way it needs to be managed. It's not working. But the
demographic shift took place over the last 25 years. This is not new. We actually are doing much better with test scores and doing much better with achievement across all demographic profiles 15 and 20 years ago. And the reality is that we didn't put the elements in place that allowed us to continue to focus on that and recognize that change wasn't going to keep happening.
We have 10 middle schools that have less than 10% proficiency in math.
Mhm.
That, I don't think we had it that bad years ago.
No, we didn't. No, we were actually our scores were much better, were much better 15 years ago, but our demographic characteristics were still along these same lines. We're moving in this direction. We knew that we were getting increasing diversity, and we actually had mechanisms in place to make sure that students across all of those sectors could learn. And we haven't been able to keep that piece and manage that as well as we should.
Well, I'm going to have to change subject a little bit, staying on education, but let's, it's good to note, Mike, if you're correct, that, we have a new Board of Education that's going to start focusing on this, and a new superintendent that will start focusing on this. But I want to talk about, there were problems at Wootton High School, where a recent racial incident occurred that resulted in the principal being suspended. Now, allegedly, and I don't know the facts for sure. Allegedly, there's been problems for a long time. Mike, what do you know about this?
I don't know much. I mean, from what I've heard, that the principal was suspended because of he didn't report the issue, and that was the challenge. And so I don't know anything beyond what I've read in the papers as well.
Well, it was reported, but it was 3 days after the incident.
It was late.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, again, not knowing the intricacies of it, there is a new principal appointed, an interim principal at Wootton High School, and it looks as if this is being challenged. But we've had a history over the past year of not only racial incidents but anti-Semitic incidents, and this seems to be a problem across the board, not just isolated to Wootton High School.